Even men at the top of their game find themselves wanting more from life. Whether it's more meaning, unshakable confidence, a bigger impact, more money, deeper love, a hotter sex life, or a powerful legacy. Find out how good your life can be on this episode of Man Alive. Also, if you're not satisfied with your love or sex life, I want you to know that I get how painful it is. Sometimes it's hard to know what to do to change things up and get the results you want. But having spent 20 years as a dating and relationship coach, supporting thousands of men to have the relationships and sex they want, I know it's possible for you when you get the right kind of support. As a woman coach, I bring a unique advantage by helping you understand how women think and feel and why they say and do things that can be so frustrating for you. My specialty is being able to tell within minutes why you're losing attraction, trust, or respect from women, and how to turn that around. Even though you've likely been raised to think you should be a man who doesn't need any help, it just doesn't work that way because none of us were handed a guide to love or sex. So every month by application, I open my calendar to a few men for consultations. Men are amazed to walk away from these sessions feeling more confident in and out of the bedroom. Coaching isn't for everyone. I work with men who are willing to be honest about their role in the situations they've created. So if you're still playing the blame game, this isn't for you. But if you're ready to take action and have a love and sex life you feel great about, book a time to meet with me. Go to shanajamescoaching.com/consult and fill out the form to tell me more about you so we can set something up. That's shanajamescoaching.com/consult. Enjoy today's podcast. Hello, and welcome to this episode of Man Alive. I'm excited to be here today to talk about I think this is one of my favorite topics, the topic of power and the topic of power and how it relates to love. And I have an amazing guest on today who I've met recently, but we dove in very quickly into the depths of our hearts and what's going on in the world. And I trust his wisdom in this topic, especially. So I'm excited to bring you David Jurasik to talk about being powerful and being loving at the same time. And, what is it to be powerful and what is power actually? And we want to dive into some of the specifics rather than just being, broad and theoretical. We're really going to talk about power in dynamics and power in relationships and loving in relationships. So thank you so much for being here today. And thank you for being a man who, I feel the blend of power and love as you speak and as you in the work that I've seen of yours.
Shana, thank you. I'm really honored to be here. Can't wait to dive in.
Okay. So your company, or at least your website, is Powerful and Loving.
Mm-hmm.
What had you name it that?
Well, yeah, there's a couple of threads. So one, I was in a lot of men's groups, wonderful organizations where I learned a lot about my own integrity, how to be a man, how to, be responsible for myself.
Yeah.
But I was still struggling in my relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And I was also being a therapist, day job as a family therapist, helping families. And then I was still struggling in my own relationship.
Yeah.
It's very humbling.
It's very humbling. I got divorced while I was as a relationship coach. It's like, it's very humbling to go through these things.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And yeah. So, and I would bring my stuff to the men's groups, and it was all about personal responsibility, own your stuff. And I was like, yeah, I'm doing that. And it's still really confusing when I'm having a fight with my wife and what's mine, what's hers. And, why are we still having these fights? And I've cleared my stuff and it's still coming up. And there's a deeper terrain that felt like it was out of the depth of that container. Right. And then therapy was really helpful, and being a therapist, but it was also it's not really helping me as fully as I felt like it could. So I started studying relationality. And at the same time, I was a sensei, an Aikido sensei. Wow. And Aikido is a very relational martial art.
Yeah.
You don't stand there just doing kata by yourself. You're always in contact.
You're always in flow and in contact with somebody else.
Yeah, exactly. And so your energy, their energy is always blending, and it can get very confusing too. Right. And so how do you find your own power, your own center, but in relationships, so you don't collapse, you don't
Mm,
overpower someone else. So that was always being played out physically,
yes.
but I needed to translate that into like more viscerally in my real life all the
Yes.
time.
Yes.
So I was reading this book by Adam Kahane. He's like a systems consultant coach, and he was working with like big people on the world stage who are in high conflict, like in Northern Ireland and South Africa and those kind
Wow.
of places, right? And he's working between like military and NGOs and like different groups.
Yeah.
And he had this book called Power and Love, and it's based on Martin Luther King's quote:
Mm,
"Power without love is reckless and abusive.
yes.
Love without power is sentimental and anemic." And he was applying it on a more
Brilliant.
global group scale. And I was like, oh my God, I need to be in a dojo where I'm studying that all the time.
Wow.
And so my instinct was to bring together a group of men, elders, and different ages and backgrounds, and say, let's study relationality. This is a terrain we don't know very much about as men because we've been deconditioned out of it. But when we were boys, we understood it.
Yep.
We understood the value of relationships. We've been taught our whole lives to be individuals, to deny relationships, and
Yeah.
then we suck at them. Even if we're trained as therapists, we suck at relationships. So that's not right. So let's gather and study it. And very quickly we found like we could learn a lot together.
Yeah.
We could spend a lifetime learning together.
Yeah.
And that community has grown into a little village. That's all we do is we study how we're relating constantly in every interaction. What's coming up for you? What's coming up for me? What can we learn from this interaction?
I
And
love.
I've been meditating for 30 years, martial arts for 25, lots of self-inquiry, but I've never grown so quickly as in the last 5 years.
I love it. That's where my coaching and all of that started, was in a community like that. We called ourselves Soul to Soul, and it was in my 20s, and we did the same thing. It was like it's like hyper speed where you're, this kind of relational meditation. What's coming up for you? What's coming up for me? How do we actually understand ourselves through that mirror from other and through the reactions and responses? It's so powerful.
Extremely powerful, yeah.
Yeah.
And there's so many blind spots trying to do it alone.
Yeah.
Even with a very trained therapist, there's only so much that they can see that you can see, and it's a very tight context.
Yeah.
But in community, people can get to know us from many angles. And when you have 4, 5, 6 people who see you from those many angles, all of a
Yeah.
sudden there's nowhere to hide, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And hopefully, and I trust this about you, hopefully other people who are in communities, right, have that kind of the depth of 30 years of meditation and 20 years, right? Like all of the history, so that people can take personal responsibility and then actually heal and grow.
Well, to that point, what's
Yeah.
fascinating for me is there's a lot of guys who are very seasoned and trained
Yeah.
in our community, and there's a lot of guys who are totally like just truck driver or dad, no therapy experience, no men's
Yeah.
group. And some of them newest guys with the
Yeah.
least amount of experience can have incredible instincts.
Wow. That's
They
awesome.
can tune into their nervous system and they can speak truth in a way without any jargon, without any filter. That can be so powerful.
Yeah. Yeah.
But they can only do that when they're in the right culture, right?
Say
They
more
can't
than
do
that.
that with their friends, with their family. They don't know how to do that in the world. But as soon as they're in our culture for a few weeks,
Yeah.
they feel the safety. They find their own truth bubbling up. They
Yep.
speak it, and they just discover the power of their truth.
That's amazing. It really does change. I find that in many of my clients too. It's like, and for myself, if I'm in a certain context where that isn't welcomed or it's not understood, it doesn't come out and it doesn't happen, right? Or when I go home to visit my family, I'm not bringing the depth of my heart and love and truth and all of that. Just, it's not the right context. So yeah, you've created, it sounds like, the safety and this shared understanding where it's welcome, and then people actually get to find themselves in that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I
Beautiful.
think of it as like my wife is a gardener, master herbalist and gardener, and I think of it as like tending the right soil. When you
Yeah.
tend the soil in the garden, people really can thrive. And very quickly, It's like when people leave a toxic relationship or a toxic workplace and they finally find a place that's good to them, you see a totally different human being after a few
Yes.
months, right? It's
Yeah.
like, holy cow, where have you been my whole life?
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing that I see again and again and again. It doesn't take a lot of training. You don't need to have read a lot of books or have a lot of insight. It's the lived experience in the right culture that transforms people.
Which brings me back to the power and love, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because there's a power in this kind of community that's based in, it sounds to me, a loving dynamic of welcoming, support, right? Kindness, compassion, all of these things. So can you tie that into how the power and love shows up there?
Yeah. Yeah. So there's a lot of, it's so fascinating to me how we perceive power and how we perceive love.
Yeah.
And also there's gender lens, right? So a lot of men perceive love as weakness.
Mm-hmm.
They can't
Mm-hmm.
help it. Even when they're very like gushy, sentimental, lovey guys, they'll come in and say, "Well, I'm too much of a pleaser. I say yes too much. I need to be tougher." And then like, why are you beating up your loving side?
Uh-huh.
Stop,
Yeah.
stop doing that. You don't need to do that here. You
Yeah.
can be really loving and gushy and deeply tender, and it's not feminine. It's
Yeah.
very masculine.
Yeah.
It's very masculine. And your daughter and your son need that energy from their father, and your wife needs that. And so there's a misperception of what loving is.
Yeah.
And there's a misperception of power, right? Of how we've been taught power is power over, power is coercive. It plays out in every school, every classroom, that someone's dominating someone else,
Yeah.
making someone higher up on the status chain. So the way Adam Kahani kind of outlines it, and I really love this, is there's like, and this is in Aikido too, power is really power within and power with.
Mm-hmm.
The capacity to me realize my potential.
Yeah.
That's really power within. Every organism on the planet wants to grow into its potential,
Mm.
right? Fulfill its blueprint,
Yeah.
whether it's a blade of grass or a bird or a human being. And power with is, can we enable that together?
Yeah.
Can we amplify that experience, support each other? And I think we're wired to be relational and interdependent. That's not really the only way we can actually grow.
Yeah.
We get stunted if we try to grow individually.
Individually. Yeah.
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 So that power and that love, and one way to think about it is that they're two wings of the same bird,
I like that.
right? Hence that Martin Luther King quote: if you have one wing is really big and one is small, you're going in circles.
Yeah.
You're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
And you can't fly very well. So we're trying to grow both of those wings, and every one of us has an imbalance on either side or both sides, right? What I think is powerful is like yelling at somebody. Well, then I get sent by my wife for anger management, and then I end up in David's group, and then I discover that's not power at all. That's insecurity. That's fear.
Mm-hmm.
That's a little boy in me having a temper tantrum, and I
Yeah.
feel shame and guilt about that. True power is learning to love that little boy into being so he can grow up, while the adult shows up and manages the situation in a considerate and respectful way.
I love that. So what would you say to a man who maybe he's not outright yelling, right? Because there's a whole range, anger but
Mm-hmm.
maybe, so somewhere in that range from even that like kind of disgust or right. You can't see if you're listening to the podcast, I'm scrunching at my face, but like that,
Passive
the
aggressive, kind of
sharpness,
disapproving.
passive aggressive, disapproving.
Yeah.
Yeah, like and not to make those parts wrong if we have them or a man has them, but how do you
Yeah.
help him shift
Oh,
to have that
good.
power be recognized? Like you said, oh, this is the younger part or the part that's
Yeah.
ashamed or
That's such a beautiful question. I don't think we think about that enough, because to me, like, love and power are just generative forces.
Yeah.
And they're always present. Power is always present.
Yeah.
So even when you don't feel powerful, you're expressing your power somewhere. You're beating yourself up, or you're being passive aggressive.
Oh, that's a good point.
You're pointing it somewhere, right?
Yeah.
And love is the same way. Love just wants to be expressed. So Are you suppressing your love? Are you, trying to hide it? That's hurtful,
Yeah.
right? To yourself and others. So I think about that, and naturally what happens in my mentoring and in the groups is like we recognize each other first and validate and honor and respect each other. So if someone is crunching their face and disapproving of their partner and they come in complaining, it's not about their partner.
Yeah.
It's about that. What's that experience right there? What's going on right there? Oh, you feel disgust. You don't like something you see in someone you love. You're projecting shame onto them. Oh, and you feel kind of don't know what to do with that. And then you feel bad because they're picking up on it and they're smelling it and they're reacting. And then you have stupid fights about it. And this whole shit show happens. But deep down, you're not happy. You're
Mm,
discontent. Let's sit, let's be with that.
let's be with
And
that.
and not even as a therapist kind of way, but like everyone in the group picks up a different aspect. So
Right.
someone tells a story or someone goes, that reminds me of, and all of a sudden within like 5 minutes, the guy just melts and unravels.
Yeah.
And he's suddenly like in touch with himself fully. He's not talking about his wife anymore. He's not talking about just this feeling. He's getting to the root of it, the heart
Yeah.
of it. And then there's like natural to want to do something about it, right? It's like,
Yeah.
oh, I don't want to put that on my wife. I don't want to complain about other people. I want to take, every man wants to take responsibility,
Yeah.
but they don't know where to enact that.
Yeah.
So they start trying to fix their partner, or they're busy trying to work to compensate. But when they finally get to the heart of what's going on, then they can show up, you
Yes.
know?
Yeah. There's to me, there's love in being with someone in that moment that you described, that kind of more external, scrunching the face, and actually just staying, right? And not letting it be like, it's about that, it's about the external, but okay, what's actually happening with you?
Yeah.
How can we love someone to the point where they get to see themselves and know themselves and realize, oh, if you are unhappy, that's not where we want you to be, right? We want to understand what's going on there and what the need
Right.
is or what the desire is really.
Yeah. I think that what you're talking about, the scrunchy nose part, is what I would name that a shame, right? There's something that feels not right,
Yeah.
yucky, gross. And it comes out as disgust, disapproval, and then we try to hide it, and it's annoyance and irritation, and it just bubbles out.
Yeah.
That's the hardest thing to deal with. Grief is easier to hold. Anger can be
Yeah.
pointed and redirected. Fear can be grounded, but shame is just like gross. And the natural instinct is to cave in on ourselves or to throw it on people we love.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's very harmful. It's like acid. It burns. It eats
Yeah.
us up, right? And what I find really helpful to help men break that spell is to say, well, there's a grain of truth in that judgment. Even
Uh-huh.
if you feel vicious towards somebody that you love, right?
Yeah.
There's something in there that speaks to some of your core values that are not being
Mm.
honored.
Yeah.
So it's not even about them. It's something in you that's not being honored.
Yeah.
And then the rest of it is toxic shit that you
Yeah.
took on in your childhood that you need to let go of, that does not belong in your nervous system,
Yeah.
right? And just today, I mean, it's just the early afternoon, I've had like 3 guys walk through this conversation with me of like feeling that disgust, that disapproval, and feeling really bad about it,
Uh-huh.
wanting to shut themselves down. And then we go, okay, well, let's explore that. Let's poke a little bit. Let's break that spell and understand something here and where it comes from. And then it unravels very quickly. And they go, oh, it's not about them. There's nothing, they're
Mm.
not doing anything wrong.
Yeah.
This is something that's trying to speak to me. And then there's a lot here that I've swallowed as a child that does not belong,
Yeah.
about how I'm supposed to be as a man, how I'm supposed to be as a partner and a good boy.
Yeah.
You know?
It has me curious too about your relationship dynamic because, as I'm just kind of sitting here mulling this over,
Mm,
um, in relationship, I think, like you said, it is one of the hardest things. And we don't want to support men or people to just, suck it up and be nice. But at the
mm,
same time, recognizing those toxic parts or recognizing, oh, it's not actually about that other person. I think in relationship for me, what that is one of the things that's really helped is
Mm-hmm.
that lens or that view of, okay, there's always something about me here.
Mm-hmm.
And there still might be something I need to work out with a partner or collaborate
Yeah.
on, but
Yeah. Yeah. There is always something interactional. It's not ever one-sided.
yeah,
But in that moment, to break the spell for myself is to
I have
reclaim
to,
my own judgment,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Pull it back.
yeah,
But it is always, we're always picking up on something true in the other
yeah,
person. We're just the shame distorts it into a negative frame as opposed to, oh, we're different, or we have different
right.
value, or in this moment we're showing up differently. And
Yeah,
mm,
I'm thinking about my ex-husband and where we had very different pacing, right? And he even said something to me
mm,
recently because we're friends now. And he said, I was talking about, oh, my kid was talking about having this kind of vacation. And he was like, well, and I said, that would be fun. And he was like, you probably wouldn't let yourself do that because you wouldn't let yourself slow down and relax enough. And I was like, I have felt that little like ping because that used to be one of our fights, that I was too busy and I
mm,
wouldn't slow down. And so there's this way that we recognized, okay, he's got a slower way. And sometimes I judged that as either being lazy or being um not paying attention to the world around him, like being selfish and
mhm,
all these things. And then for me, he would
yeah,
judge that as me not being in my heart enough. And
mhm,
so, um, in a way, yeah, I guess I'm curious for you. Like I've had to I don't know. I guess I'm trying to understand
yeah,
what I've done,
yeah,
right? How I've dissolved some of that judgment to the point where
yeah,
it's like, okay, you're you and I'm me, and it's different inside of us. We have different, but if I can understand, and
right,
even I now see some value in, oh, the way he slows down helps me see how I could learn to
mm,
relax more. And I think
yeah,
he's learned from me how to take on more and organize. Yeah. So
mhm.
any kind of dynamics that you have from your relationship
Oh my
too, or that you've
gosh.
seen.
Well, I'd love to just break down what you just described because you've
Okay.
been on a journey, right? And it's not a given. Shame is like you have to intentionally work. It's like a detox. It
Right.
doesn't just leave
It
your
doesn't just
system.
leave your system. Yes.
People carry it on and pass it generation after
Yeah.
generation after,
Yeah.
right? And it's our society's full of it. So you have to like actively. So the phases that I walk through that I see you've gone through is the
Yeah.
first one is breaking the spell. It's like, oh wait, I'm judging this person. There's something for me to look at. Maybe there's a little truth in them for them, but like I got to own that
I
stuff,
have to. Yeah.
try
Okay.
to understand it and break the spell of it's not all true.
Right. It's
That
not all
negative
true and my
voice.
way isn't the right way.
Exactly.
Okay.
And so once you break that spell, it's uncomfortable because, you start to see a lot of uncomfortable truths. I've been doing that my whole life, judging my partners as being too needy,
Yeah.
and they've been judging me as being too selfish. There's a grain of truth in both sides, but there's a lot of distortion,
Yeah.
right? And then we get to the childhood. Where does this come from? Well, I learned that when I expressed need, I would get looked at with disgust in my family. I'm too much, too
Yeah.
needy myself. So
Yeah.
I learned to be self-reliant, and I'm a boy. So boys are supposed to be super self-reliant, all
Yep.
that stuff, right?
Yep.
But then the second phase is really important, is like actually feeling and detoxing that gross feeling in the nervous system,
Yeah.
like not throwing that on the other people anymore
Yep.
and not collapsing, but going, okay, there's something here. And the longer every second I sit with that disgust, that disapproval, that yuckiness, it seeps out of my system
Yeah.
because the nervous system is very intelligent. Disgust is a very clear signal something does not belong here. I've swallowed something, like literally, if I take something in poisonous or not good for my body wants to puke it out, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Or get it out of the skins, or somehow it wants to excrete,
Yep.
get out. So that feeling of something isn't right, I feel disgust. I'm not, even when you say to yourself, I'm unworthy, I'm inadequate, the feeling in your body is really accurate. It's
Mm.
saying this does not belong.
This doesn't belong here.
So when you let yourself feel that, and I like plant medicine is a good avenue for some people when it's really deeply entrenched, where they actually like vomit and excrete and they
Yep.
release
Yep.
viscerally. But we can be very gentle. Every time we talk about it and we take ownership, we let go a little bit and we
Right. I
stop
can feel
believing
like,
the
okay,
story.
The tension in our
Yeah.
faces as we're making these scrunchy faces, it's like it's
Uh,
loosening a little bit as we're talking about it though, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
And you get slowly and more acceptance, and people go, oh man, I feel that way too. I want to strangle my partner sometimes too, and I love them. And the more you accept that people are different and we all feel these feelings, and we don't have to hurt each other with it,
Yeah.
the more we can start to release it.
Yeah.
And then the third stage is where I feel you're at when you described your story, is that we get to that place of really honoring and respecting differences and
Mm,
understanding the nuances between us. We can be very similar and very different.
yeah.
And when we accept our differences, we can be dynamic. We can learn from
Yes.
each other. We can make great jazz together. When we don't accept those differences, we tear each other apart.
Yeah.
That's the state of the world right
Yeah.
now, right?
Yeah.
Um, and I feel like that happens naturally in healthy communities and cultures, that we're always unshaming and we're coming to that greater reveal of who we really are together.
Mm, I like that. The greater reveal that comes from unshaming, right? And this is, I mean, this is the tragic part, that in the world right now we're holding, and different cultures are holding, the shame and the rage and the anger and the God, just seeing, Israel, Palestine, it's and
Mm-hmm.
Ukraine and Russia, all these places, it's like it's old wounds, and yet now they're current because it's right, it's just continuing to
Mm-hmm.
fester. And um yeah, I wish that we were able to bring this into that more global. It sounds like the Adam Kahana, that's actually what he's working
Yeah.
with.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it can happen with every individual, right? Is if we can look at our enemy or someone we hate or we feel disgust towards, and it can be even our own family,
Yeah.
right? That's just human nature. Is when we look at that part of shame and we take
Yes.
ownership and break the spell, then we actually start to see the world with clear eyes.
Yeah.
And
And
then
it's
we go, okay, well, I don't agree with you. You're doing things that I really make me unhappy, but I respect you and love you.
mm-hmm,
And I will
mm-hmm,
have clear boundaries with you when I need them,
mm-hmm.
but I don't have to judge you and look at you with
Well,
like I'm
right.
superior, right? Or I'm better than you. That
And
doesn't.
what I've found too is like when you
Mm-hmm.
listen through judgment, whether it's to your partner or a stranger, the person on the other end starts, they change, right? Like then they can get more
Mm-hmm.
defensive, or they can be more entrenched in their position. Whereas if we are relaxing into that curiosity and trying to understand, then people tend to shift or soften.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, our nervous systems are so attuned to each other. A little bit of anxiety makes the other person anxious. A little bit of shame triggers their shame. A little bit of edginess or anger, all of a
Yeah.
sudden they're getting all ready to fight. We're so tuned into each other. It's really amazing, right?
Yeah. And
Because yeah.
what are some of the ways that you and your wife work through
Hmm.
this?
Wow. There's so much that we've learned we've been together for 12 years and we have a daughter together. And I'm so grateful because we've gone through so many periods of like disillusionment and
Mm,
fighting and not liking each other in moments a lot,
yeah.
and we've learned to fight fairly, and I'd say repairing has been a huge thing.
Yeah.
Tending the relationship every day,
Yeah.
treating it like a garden.
And what is fair
um
fighting? You said, I don't want to skip over that. We want to
yeah.
fight fairly.
Yeah, I think there's a way that we can fight to hurt each other and put each other down
Yeah.
and win, be feel like we're right and we always lose.
Hmm.
Or we can be like, yeah, I'm really pissed off at you, and I got to clear this. Are you
Yeah.
open to hear this right now? And
Yeah.
if you're not, I'll wait. But we gotta clean up our laundry today because something's
So
not
it's
right
like
for me.
a clearing, trying to understand each other versus I'm just going
Yeah,
to explode and dump this and put you down and just shit on
exactly.
the
Yeah,
shit in the
conflict.
garden.
Yeah, conflict is a natural part of relating, right?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't know. I don't have any functional relationships that haven't gone through conflict,
Yeah.
and they've always gotten stronger when we've worked through it.
Yeah. Me
But
too.
most of the people in my life that I know still avoid conflict, and then it's just a matter of time that those relationships implode. They're
Totally.
happy, love you, you're great. And then all of a sudden we're not talking. And like, what happened? Passive aggressive, right? That
Yeah.
anger's there. It didn't
Yeah.
get sorted out. Nothing got spoken. So my wife has taught me, because I used to be more avoidant,
Hmm.
even as an Aikido sensei, black belt, I would still want to avoid, when she'd be angry, I'd like, calm down, and she taught me to meet her and match her anger and meet
Yeah.
her fear and be in the fire together and not burn each other.
Which to me sounds like
Yeah,
being in the fire together and not burning each other is not blaming, attacking, shaming the other, but
that's
having
right.
the capacity to tolerate. I am feeling so intensely angry right now. Ugh, I'm not
Yeah.
sure what to do with it. I don't want to put it on you, but I want to
Hmm.
work through it together. Is that
Right.
like the fair fight?
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Yeah. And that's taken us a lot of years, but we figured that out and learned that. And the repairing is because it's going to be messy and we get cut and bruised and metaphorically.
Yeah.
So repairing is always important. Even just an eye roll can hurt one of us. And
Right.
okay, well, let's not spend 2 hours relitigating this shit of what you meant and I meant, and let's just repair because
Yeah.
that's what's needed, right?
Okay. I want to hear how you repair. And I also want to
Yeah.
acknowledge, right. Sometimes when there's an eye roll or there's something that seems small, your tone, the eye roll, and then the other person can be
Mm.
like, why are you so damn sensitive? Or what the hell is your problem? Or
Oh
I
my
didn't
God.
mean
Yeah.
it that way. Right. And then that can
Yeah.
go into this big, huge explosion. So,
Yeah.
okay, if we're really connected and wanting to understand each other, it would be more like, oh, honey, okay, tell me more, like what hurt your feelings. And if we
Mm.
don't need to defend or protect or prove, I'm good, I'm not an asshole that you think I am, then we can go
Hmm.
for understanding.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. You got it. Yeah. I think what took me and my wife, Maria, a long time was to get out of the intention game. Well, I didn't intend that, or it's not what I meant. Or,
Oh, that's a
oh,
good one.
and to just get into like this, the impact. It doesn't matter what you meant or didn't mean. This is how I'm feeling. Can you acknowledge how I'm feeling? You don't have to collapse into sorry, please forgive me, and I'll never do it again. That's not true. That's not real. Can you just acknowledge that when you did this, it had this impact? And it's not that you're wrong or bad. It's just that's what happened.
I love
Can you
that.
acknowledge
It's
my
a
reality? And
very powerful distinction.
yeah, and then maybe you realize, oh fuck, I do that a lot. Well, I don't know why I do that, and you investigate, or maybe you just realize I'm just having a bad day and being hypersensitive, but still, you know, there's an impact that we have on each other.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to, yeah, we don't have to spend an enormous amount of time analyzing it and figuring it out and trying to figure out who's right or who's wrong or who's sensitive or not. We
Yeah.
can just accept the reality of we affect each other.
Mm,
And can we acknowledge that? And out of that, compassion, remorse, forgiveness can come naturally. And if sometimes it's not even needed, sometimes it just needs to be aired out. I did that, impact on you. Ouch. So, I'm actually not sorry, but I see the impact on you.
no.
That,
I don't
well,
imagine that always
like,
goes over well, right? But right, yeah.
but you don't
How do
have,
you, yeah, I know what you mean.
you
So
know,
how do you navigate that when you're not sorry?
I think, I think it's just being honest. Like I
Yeah.
see the impact I've had on you.
Yeah. Right.
And I'm also angry because you did something that hurt me. And I'm not letting go of my anger yet. So I'm
Yeah.
angry at you, and I'm also recognizing, ouch, that I hurt you.
Right.
And
Right.
can we just
I
sit?
didn't mean to
Can
hurt
we
you,
sit
right?
with
But can we
that?
sit with that? Yes.
Yeah,
It sounds
yeah.
like that's part of the repair.
That's to me. That's the most important
Yeah.
part. The other stuff, the heart figures out and sorts out by itself. But that gets out of the head into the heart, and then the rest, has a natural course. But
So through sitting with what's
yeah,
actually really there, like, hey, this is what's happening for me, this is what's happening for the other person, and then actually being willing to sit in the beyond right or wrong. Is that what you're saying?
well, I'll give you an example. Like in
Yeah.
in martial arts, you're practicing with people, and people get injured all the time.
Yeah.
And sometimes they get injured because they're being dumb. Pardon the expression. Like you tell them don't do that, and they do it, and then they get injured. But sometimes they injure themselves, and they look at their partner because they're in contact with the partner, and
Uh-huh.
they go, "You hurt me, you hurt me," and they start like blaming, right? And the
Yeah.
person's like, "I didn't do that. What are you talking about? I didn't grab you. I just," and they go into defending, and
Yeah.
And it's like, it's the same thing that happens in our
Same.
verbal interactions, right?
Yep. Yep.
So the way to cut through all that bullshit is like, yeah, you're hurt, and I grabbed you, and something that I did contributed or was part of that interaction.
Yeah.
That is reality. I might feel like saying sorry, I might not feel like saying sorry, but I can
Yeah.
acknowledge what actually is going on.
Got it.
And
Yeah.
if I'm getting feedback that that's happening with multiple people, and I'm used to saying they're too sensitive, I'm starting to realize, wait a second, there's something that I'm doing. I got to look at that. I don't want to
Yeah.
be injuring people. I don't want people constantly telling me that I'm hurting
Yep.
them. Or I recognize that person says that to everybody they train with. There's something going on for them, or it's a confluence of both of us,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
I'm grabbing a little too tight, they're pulling a little too hard, and we're both creating this dynamic of hurt and being hurt. And but that kind of comes out in the wash. I feel like the breakthrough is for us to just acknowledge we have impact on each other,
Mm.
regardless of intention,
Yeah.
and can we soften into that and just be with that reality?
I like that. We have impact on each other, right? We're not fighting for the intention. And we're also, I think, willing to acknowledge, all right, maybe I wasn't at 100%, or maybe, I did something that hurt you. And right. And the difference between I'm sorry as a like, I'm bad versus I'm sorry for the impact I caused, right? I'm sorry you felt
Yeah.
that way. I'm
Yeah.
sorry that hurt you. That there's power in that, and being able to say that versus I'm sorry, I'm bad, I'm wrong, I'm a horrible human, I can't believe I did that, right? That's where we lose power.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think about, I worked with kids for a long time. So many thousands of times growing up, we see this interaction of two kids are fighting or playing, and then it turns a
Yeah.
little ugly.
Yeah.
And then the adult comes in and says, okay, you say sorry. And then people are like, oh, sorry. And it's coercive, it's disingenuous, it's
Mm.
disempowering. It doesn't teach people to resolve conflicts or actually show real empathy and compassion.
Mm.
It does nothing but tries to get rid of that interaction, right? And then we
Interesting.
learn that and we bring that into our relationships. I'm
Okay,
sorry,
so
I'm
what did you
sorry.
do
Can you stop being
instead?
mad at me?
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
right. Sorry. What did you do instead with the kids that actually helped?
well, a lot of experimenting to come to something I saw when I went to a daycare for my daughter when she was like 3 or 4. It was brilliant. There were like 30, 40 kids. It was like packed room, and there were all these caregivers, and there was this one old woman, right? And she was just standing there like an
Like a
owl.
Buddha.
She was just she was
Owl.
like very calm, but she
Mhm.
would swoop in. You could see I was like there for about 15 minutes. I saw 5 times she swooped in,
Wow.
5 times. And like every minute or two there'd be a conflict, right? You grab my toy, no,
Yeah.
give it back. There'd be like two kids yelling at each other. She would swoop in. And unlike the other caregivers who would sort of like try to police and like, okay, what happened? And give her back the toy. And she paused the whole thing. She got in the middle, right? She just like paused it. She said, okay. She turned to each of them and said, what's going on? How are you feeling? What's happening? How are you feeling? What's happening? And then she had them both. She listened to both of them and said, okay, what do you guys want to do about this? I was like, what? She's asking a
Oh,
3-year-old?
yeah,
Like they don't have the capacity. And they did,
they did.
because she
Wow.
brought this calm presence that cut through the storm,
Wow.
because they would stop immediately when she came close. They sort of calmed down around her
Mm-hmm.
and looked at her kind of, help, help. And she didn't fix it for them. She didn't make anyone right or wrong.
Yeah.
She had them both feel heard. And then
Yeah.
she asked them to turn to each other and figure out, what do you want to do next? And I'll help you figure it out. But I'm just here to support you. And I
Wow.
think like every relationship needs that third presence.
Yeah.
I think it was a famous poem by Robert Bly, The Third Body.
Mm.
There's like me, there's you, and there's a third body that holds us.
Yeah.
That's the relationship.
Yep.
Can we activate that third presence
Yes.
that's
Right. Which
stronger
can
than
be
me
our
trying
own
to be right?
witnesses. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
My witness, your witness, the kind of the we witness. I love
Mm-hmm.
the like, oh, I notice we are I was working with this morning. I notice, I'm seeming this way, or I notice you're seeming this way, or I notice we are seeming this way, right? To be able to step outside of it versus be consumed by it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
Thank you.
hard, right? That's
Yeah.
hard in a moment of conflict. So that's why we need sometimes mentors, community, other
Yes.
allies to come in and say, okay, let me hear you guys out.
Yeah.
Let me empower you as a couple.
Yes.
You got this. We're there for you. You know, we
Yep.
when people get like the tragedy, I think, is when people get married or they make a commitment ceremony. You get all these people committing to like, I'll be here for you, and that never happens.
No,
It's
no,
so
it's so
rare, and
rare.
that's what we all need to actually have functional relationships. We
Yep.
need other strong people around us, loving people,
Yeah.
to catch us in moments where we wobble and we,
Yep.
we have fights that we can't resolve.
Yeah.
It's so essential, right?
Yeah.
Like we could talk about skills for hours, and but to actually practice it, sometimes we need other people that just
Yeah.
lean against and show us how. Yeah.
Yeah. Agreed. Well, thank you so much for this deep and powerful conversation and loving conversation.
Wow.
Any last thing you want to say before we tell people where to find more of you?
Well, Shayna, I'm just so like delighted how deep and far we went in their conversation, like so rich. And there's just like there's so much here, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, well, if people want to find me, they can find me at powerfulloving.com. We're a small
Awesome.
village and everyone knows each other in our men's community, and we're just in it for the long term to grow together.
Mm,
But I also love getting to know other men's and women's communities, and being an ally to
yeah.
all kinds of communities, because we can all kind of build our own little villages, but we all also need to work together. The world is in a difficult place.
Very difficult place. And I love the idea of communities coming together and yeah, just
Mhm.
building these bridges.
It's a joy to know you and be connected to you.
You too. Thank you so much for all of the decades of work. I can feel your depth and your capacity to be in the midst of these situations and stay present and, witness and responsive instead of reactive. And yeah, it's beautiful to witness.
Oh, shucks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm so glad you joined us for today's episode of Man Alive. I hope you enjoyed our conversation and it gave you something to consider and explore in your life. If you like what you heard, I'd be so grateful for you to subscribe and write a quick review that helps men like you find us. And again, head over to shanajamescoaching.com/quiz or text the word alive, ALIVE, to 44144 to get a sense of how you can become a better lover and leader. You'll start to see how you can be both more respected and desired in your unique and genuine way. If you don't feel as confident or as excited about life or love as you'd like to be, this quiz is a really great starting point and will guide you toward a more passionate love life and a more inspiring and successful career. So again, text ALIVE, ALIVE, to 44144 or head over to shanajamescoaching.com/quiz. Join us each week for a new episode of Man Alive.